Hey there, welcome back to another Touchdesigner tutorial. Today we're going to be looking at sort of creating a kaleidoscopic audio reactive effect. If I play the video right now, you can sort of see the look that we're going for and potentially even creating multiple variations like this. A few things before we jump into this tutorial. Firstly, this file as is with a few different controls, parameters, and style options will be available to download on my Patreon. So if you just want to access this file and use it however you please, feel free to download and start playing around with it. Secondly, this visual is sort of a deconstructed minimal version of one of my more complicated visuals, of which I can make available already available on the Patreon. But today, obviously trying to do tutorials for beginners, I stripped it back and hopefully we're just going to go over the fundamental techniques to sort of creating a noise-based kaleidoscope effect. And a lot of the styling options will be up to you. It's sort of just these foundational noise elements combined and displaced together. And if you change those base parameters or like add in pixelation or any of those sort of image effects, it drastically changes the end results. Like if I do this, for example, you can see it brings in pixelated elements, especially when we start playing with it, and you can add that to every layer across. I think that's pretty much it. New microphone. We're going to dive in today. We're going to try to recreate this. Yeah, like I said, I stripped it back. So while I foundationally know what's going on, I'm going to still keep this up here and reference back to it and go by step what's happening. This tutorial should be approachable for beginners, but if you're completely new to Touchdesigner, I have a tutorial on that you're welcome to follow. But otherwise, let's just dive straight into it. And yeah, feel free to request anything in the comments below or ask any question and I will answer. All right, so the first thing that we're gonna do today actually is we're gonna set a global parameter for the resolution. So when we press tab and go into the chop here, we wanna type in constant. And then for name, we want to type in res x for resolution on the x-axis, and then plus, and then res y. I'm going to be doing 1920 by 1080, just typing it in like so. If you are on the free version, you'll be limited to 1080 by 720. And if you want to do something more narrow, you can change these values like such. We're going to be using a few different noise parameters that will all be generated from scratch. So that's why we want to create a global resolution in this case. So that way when we update or change the screen size, we can change this and it will modify all of the noise parameters we have. But let's go ahead and just add in our first noise top. So we're not going to be doing any sort of particle simulations or anything like that today, just simple 2D noise. So this should work on most computers, and you should be able to do a pretty high resolution if you want to as well. Awesome. Okay, so let's go ahead and set our resolution first. So if we go to our common tab and then click plus on the res, which allows us to interact with it, and then we can drag this 1920 onto our first one and click reference, and then same for 1080. Like so. Now this will be set to 1080p. Whenever we create a noise or a base parameter like so, we want to make sure we set the resolution the same way, because now whenever we change these values, if I make this also 1080, you can see that it will update this to be that resolution. Cool. Now as for the noise, we're going to sculpt it to our liking. You're welcome to copy the parameters that I set, but bear in mind that if you want to create something unique, these are the parameters that you want to change and sculpt to your own liking. But what I have today is for the period, I have 1.3. So that sort of just turns the size up. So I've just dragged that up a little bit. For the harmonic spread, harmonic gain, and all that, I've left as the base parameters. I've brought the exponent level right up just to get some isolated bits of noise. And then I also wanted to make sure the black background was black, which I've done by dragging the offset all the way down and then dragging the amplitude up just so it highlights some of the noise a bit more. And I believe that is pretty much it. Welcome to copy these exact numbers if you want, but as you can see, the way I usually set parameters is just by sliding and picking it to my liking. And we can come back to the visual at the very end and change these parameters around as well. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is if I copy this one down, is we want to, I'll copy this one as well, connect this noise here to a threshold. And then we sort of just want to leave it as is, like this. We have an audio reactive component going into this one, which I'll show later, but we just want to make sure we isolate this noise. The next thing is we're going to now create two other noise masks. So we want to go ahead and grab another noise, like from here. We want to make sure we set the resolution the same way we just did. Now this noise, we do want to make sure we have a very specific gradient going on. I'm just gonna press play and let you see how this is transforming over time. So the period is turned up quite a bit. I recommend you just copy the setting and the harmonic is all the way down. And then on the transform tab, I've typed in this piece of code, ABS time .seconds, which will perpetually increase as the project goes. It just shows the amount of seconds. I've then divided this by 100, so it's 100 times slower and it has a very gradually slow change. This is going to be doing some displacing, so we want a gradual small change over a long period of time, so that way we sort of get like an infinite generative kind of look going on. And then the rest we can leave as is. Then I also want to insert another noise, like so. Welcome to copy these parameters again as well. As for the seed, you don't really, it's completely just taking the same parameters of noise, but generating something different, a different shape. And then don't worry about this offset, we'll come back to this later. This is just some audio reactive components. Make sure you set the type to 4D as well. We're going to use that for audio reactive later, and then make sure you set the resolution like so. We then want to combine this threshold with the other two noises, so we can insert a comp like so, and then we want to set the comp to where is it? Minimum, like that. We then want to plug in the threshold first, then the large noise, and then the bass noise, which will sort of get us a random looking pattern like that. I'm just going to make sure that is all correct. Yep, that looks right. Again, sort of just going based off of a project I've already made. I hope I included a video of the more complicated one, if that is something that does intrigue you, but it's a little bit harder to dissect as a beginner. That's kind of like the goal of this video, is to dissect these techniques that we use in Touchdesigner so you can sort of understand it and then go forth and make your own. But yeah, cool. All right, the next thing we want to do is we want to do a displace. So we can right click and get a displace like so. And then we want the comp going into the first input. And then the second input, like I mentioned, we want to use this gradually changing noise. So we're displacing it over a slow time. We want to leave the settings as is, the source midpoint at 0.5, and then set the extend to repeat or mirror, either or. Just changes, again, a very foundational component. And then the thing we want to do is we want to go to our chop tab and get an LFO. So if I pull up the visual very quickly, and then turn on this displace layer, you can see these elements here are being brought in, and this one's being brought out like slowly over time. What this actually is you can see this we have this noise here, which is being dragged and stretched and then we're doing the kaleidoscope effect later. That's because it's being displaced by this noise going on here. And we're essentially just pulling and then pushing it in and out slowly over time. And we're using an LFO, which just pulsates between two values to control that. If I turn that off, you see you get a much more still one that will still change over time based on the music. But just to add another element of movement, I've got this LFO here, which is being independent from the music. If you want to combine this with music, that is something you could look into. It's not too difficult, so I recommend exploring that if it intrigues you, but otherwise we're just going to do it this way. So yeah, we want to grab an LFO from the chops, set the frequency down to a very, very small number, like 0.008, like I have there, and then leave the rest as is. So a LFO, base LFO is going to go between -1 and 1 and slowly back and forth. And then we want to click plus and drag that onto the word displace weight and click chop reference, which will assign it to both of these values, which is then going to displace it slowly over time with the shape between a weight of -1 and 1. Awesome. I hope that makes sense as to some of the movement that's going on. All right, the next thing we're going to do is create a bit of a feedback loop, which is a pretty simple thing if you guys have done this before. So we want to connect this operation to a feedback, like so. We then want to set it to a level, like that, and then connect this level to another composite and set the operation to over. And let me just check the order. We want to actually drag this displace into the over as well, and we want the displace on top. So the way you can do that is you can either swap the operation order, or you can actually click this plus button, which will move it up 1, like so. And then we want to, is it the comp? Yes, we want to drag the comp onto the feedback, which is going to be basically saying, okay, hey, take this video source and feed it back into here and then push it forward more, which is going to create an infinite loop. And you can see when I do it like that, it's receiving this and then it's slowly filling up the screen as all of this information is perpetually stacked on top of each other. You can see here's the base and then this is just getting taken up. So the real way we stop that is we use this level to be like, okay, hey, make the image slightly transparent so that way it's slowly fading out rather than infinitely stacking over time. So the way we do that is in level, we go to our post tab and we have opacity, and then we want to set that number to 0.95. I think I just dragged it down slightly, but I'm just going to set it to 0.95 like that. And you can see there we have a little bit of a trail going on. If you want to make that more intense, make it 0.99 and you have an even bigger trail. Again, a lot of what we're doing is just stylistic components. Like, I understand a lot of you will click on this video and see the visual and be like, oh, I want to create exactly that. But understanding what makes what is going to give you the tools to take this project file and then make it your complete own beast, which would be awesome. And I'd love to see what you guys make. Share it on Insta, post it on YouTube, tag me. I go feral for that shit. It really excites me. All right, the next thing we're going to do is create this sort of mirror effect. Go from this shape on the left here, which is our infinite shapes, sort of our final shapes that we're going to be playing with, and then mirroring it and then adding some texturing. So at this point, if you are looking at the image and are like, oh yeah, this looks like noise, but I don't love the look of it, go back into these noises here and then play with these parameters. Sort of just be like, oh yeah, maybe I don't like the very bass noise. And sorry, we're looking at the wrong one. I was like, why is this not changing? Here we go. So we have the bass noise like this here, and you can sort of go back in and be like, oh yeah, maybe I need to change this one. Oh, I really like the sharp shapes. Maybe I want that. Maybe I want to pixelate it a little bit. Maybe I want more to take up the screen. Maybe I want the transparency to turn down a little bit. Play around, go crazy. But yeah, sorry. Let's continue on. So the next 3 steps is a displace. So we want to connect this comp here to a displace. We want to set the extend to mirror and then set the weight to 0.5 for both of them. So you can just type that in if you want. We then want to just displace it with a solid object. So it just does this displacement against itself. So what I did is I just grabbed a rectangle like this, made the size bigger than 1, so it just takes up the whole screen, plug it in. That's how you get the kaleidoscope. Now you can do this with a mirror, obviously, and other effects. I like to do it this way, as I feel like displacing, you get a whole lot of parameters you can control. And then you could also, for example, make this rectangle even more noise and sort of play around with more textural effects, maybe apply it here, stuff like that. Add in slopes to make the offset not as strong. Obviously, don't feel like you have to copy this. This is just me explaining why I like it, and then I can sort of play with all the parameters like that, you know. But yeah, that's why I've done it this way. And then I have connected in another noise. So, first things first is we want to connect this displace to a noise. And then we actually want to plug the displace into the second input. And then plug this comp into the first input. So the first input here typically sets the background image. You can also do what we've done here, which is we go to the output and go on, hey, just set this as noise. We could have assigned the resolution here, but it's just faster this way, so the way it's a trickle-on effect. And then the second input essentially is like, hey, we're going to provide you an image. I want you to map the noise to the image we're inputting. And you can see that's happening here when we pull up. We have the base shape here, but then it's mapping this noise onto that base shape. From here, I have set the type to Perlin 4D. I've picked a random seed. We'll come back to that. Set the period to 1.8. Harmonics and stuff like that I believe is default. Amplitude I've changed a little bit. Feel free to copy that. And then most importantly, turned monochrome off. I should have done this as well, but I can probably just like wing it and come up with my own one, you know? Something like that. What do? We turn the harmonics down. Yeah. This is pretty much how I came up with it, as I was like, oh yeah, I like this shape. Oh, let's make it slightly more intense so we get a more intensity between the colors, but it's pretty much how I came up with it. I might see like this very gradual effect and be like, oh, I don't like that. And then look back and be like, oh, that's stemming from this noise. What happens if I bring the harmonic gain down, nothing, harmonic period up, maybe the period like that. What I'm basically showing you is, or the point of me showing you this is that this is how I learn a lot of the operators. Obviously, this is the wiki, and I highly recommend that. But I think just having a sort of investigative thinking towards how everything works in Touchdesigner and looking at it from this perspective is going to help you like understand and be able to sculpt your own vision, which is a very difficult thing to learn to do in TD. So, but you will get there. You will indeed get there. But yeah, awesome. Very quickly, so I'm just going to copy this noise across because I quite like the parameters I have set on that one. And then plug this displace in like that. And then yeah, the seed that we have here is where a lot of the just random colors come from. So feel free, once you've got like a hue that you like, for example, to then play around with your seed and then pick a palette you like. You can even make that audio reactive later on if you want. Cool. All right. The next thing we're going to do is just a simple noise filter. You can see the difference between this one on the left and the right. It has a bit of noise going on. Very simple. Doing this super quickly, just in case you don't already know. We want to connect this one to a noise like that. Set the output to just noise. Drag the period all the way down. Cool. Transform, type in the abs time.seconds command, give it some movement. Connect that to a level. Once again, post and drag the opacity right down this time, maybe 0.2. Create a composite. First one is the noise, and then compomp, and then set screen. And that's how you do a basic noise filter in Touchdesigner. Please memorize that. One day I'm gonna stop teaching people. And then finally, I've connected it to a null and just set that as my background by clicking that blue button. And that's pretty much it. That is how we get the kaleidoscopic effect in this video. I recognize this video is already at 20 minutes. I've tried to keep the tutorials a little bit shorter, but we still need to do the audio reactive component. But in terms of sculpting your noise from here on out, please go back and play with your parameters. You can see you can create really psychedelic kind of looking stuff now. So please play around with the noise. Please embed your own images. That's kind of a fun way to do stuff. And then also any of these effects that you really like on your slider, bear in mind that we can make that audio reactive as well. So yeah, also feedback. Maybe you want no feedback. Maybe you want lots of feedback. Do as you please. The world is your oyster. Cool. Let's make it audio reactive. So first thing we want to do is go to our chop and do a audio file or audio device in. Also, sorry, I've just realized that I'm using a new microphone today and I might be leaning back and forth. If you're getting to the point in this video and that is bothering you, please let me know, because I don't watch through every bit of my videos back. So please type in a comment, and if it's really annoying, I'll make sure to keep it consistent. But yes, audio file. So we have our audio file here. You can also do an audio device in if you prefer. Let's connect this to a audio device out, which will let us hear it. We then want to go to our palette and go to tools and then go audio analysis, drag and drop, feed our audio file into that. Really great tool for beginners here. Highly recommend you use it. Connect this to a select, and then we can click plus here and interact with the UI and sort of toggle on everything you want. I usually toggle on these settings. They are the most useful for me. And then basically the way I configured the audio reactivity was just like how I demonstrated. I would be scrolling through here and be like, oh, hey, I like that. Let me assign that to one of the values. Like audio elements, I should say. So the way I've done it is I'm going to go back up here as we have our select. And let's say for the noise here, so we have our three noises, the noise, threshold, and noise here. I've firstly set another LFO here, and then connected that to a math where I've just changed the range from -1 to 0 to 1. And then assigned that to an offset and slowed it right down. That's basically what's happening very slowly over time. Again, if you want the exact specific configuration of this all, the file download is in the Patreon, but this is more about educating how everything works. So I've connected in my audio device like this, and then connected it to a speed, and it's all the default operations like this. And then in the transform tab of this noise, I've clicked the plus, dragged the FMSD into the translate 4D. If you don't have that option, you need to set your type to 4D. And then I've multiplied that transform by 1. A speed operation, like I always say, just perpetually builds over time, and the FMSD basically measures how fast or intense a song is at a given moment. So this will just perpetually change the noise like this over time. And if I make this big screen so you can actually see what is happening, it's going to do this slowly as the song is moving, and then the faster the song is, the faster it will do this, which is a really, really good way to capture the intensity of the audio. So that's how I decided to do that. Another thing I've done is I've connected from this first select a lag. I've set a few different parameters here to just, you know, not make it so intense. I've then attached the lag to the soften element on the kick. So when we look at this threshold, when we drag the soften up, you see it creates these blurred lines. And when I drag this like that, you can see we get this sort of little pulse. And I'm like, you know what, that pulse is really nice. It would make sense if it was happening every time there's a kick. And that's basically what this does. And in terms of audio reactivity for this whole kaleidoscope, you can add in many more effects. I'll show you one more. But I stripped back a lot of it just because I wanted people to sort of play around with that on their own. I want you to go into all of these foundational elements, maybe the displace, be like, oh, hey, maybe not that, but maybe you like it zooming in and out slowly over time, or in the speed with the song. Maybe you like the kick doing that sort of thing. Play around, explore, be creative, etc. Another shout out or thing you could explore is a bloom. So if we click the palette, go to image filters, grab bloom. If I drag that, let's do it between the noise here and this textured noise. So drag it in like that and drag it and replace this line. That's intense. Let's switch that to, let's keep it on 11, on 16 actually. Let's just bring the threshold down. I'm gonna make it 11 just so we keep the background. Bring the intensity down, bring the threshold down even more. I'm gonna turn off this glow and just bring the bloom up so it just highlights the color. Drag the ramp off and then be like, set it at a maximum value I want. Okay, there, that's as bright as I would want it. So like that. So 0.24, and I'll press Shift FC, which gives us a little comment, and I'll go 0 to 0.24. Let's hide the background. I've then added in another select like this. You can drag the select onto there and it'll do a dotted line, just sort of makes a clearer view. This high value I want to assign to make the flashy effect. So I'm gonna plug this into there, but first I want to change it from a value between 0 and 1 to 0 and 2.4. So by connecting this to a math, going to range, see it's from 0 to 1 on default. I want to change this from 0 to from 1 to 0.24. Then we can click plus and drag this high onto the intensity. Oh, or export shot. Just for sake, I'm going to change that back to intensity. Now, if I play the song, I have it muted, but I'll make it very quiet. And you can see now, every time there's a little like flash, it flashes the image. And that's pretty much how I just came up with the audio activity of it all. Maybe it's too slow. Cool, let me turn this one up. Do stuff like that. Maybe I don't like the shapes. Just play around with that. World is your oyster. But that is pretty much it for today's tutorial. I'm going to include the original base version, which sort of looks as something a little bit like this, minus the hectic effects we have going on. The very soft sort of one. Again, I'm not sure if I included it. I'll try to include it in the edit of this video, but the more intense version I have is available on my Patreon as well. You might need to scroll down a little bit to find it, but it is there. It's essentially this project file with like ×3, with just like 3 times more audio active elements going on, a lot more styling going on, some particles, etc. Just some chaos stuff. Not as easy to navigate as beginner, but if you're a more advanced user or just want to use it to try learn, perfect for that. Otherwise, a like and a subscribe, greatly appreciated. Feedback also greatly appreciated. I've been getting lots of great feedback recently, which is awesome, but if you have any comments on how I can improve, I would love to hear. I am not a YouTuber, I'm just figuring this stuff out. And other than that, if you have a tutorial in mind, please let me know. I'm kind of running out of ideas, so we'll see how I go going forward. Definitely want to keep doing cool stuff for you guys, but if you have a tutorial in mind, I will definitely do it. But that's pretty much it from me. Peace.